I was told I had a 20% chance of making it to 5 years past my diagnosis. So that right there is, in itself. But I don't believe in kind of what other people say. I believe the human will and spirit are very powerful, more powerful than anything else in this world.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your host, Angie Scott and Barb Carey.
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. Barb and I just finished wrapping up our Special Women on Ice series of episodes, and we hope you really enjoyed that. You've heard us mention the Woman Angler and Adventurer Facebook group on the show several times. Hopefully you've joined so we can all stay connected there. One of our favorite things to see is women from all over the country, even some internationally, introducing themselves and telling us about the amazing outdoor pursuits they're involved in. One introduction in particular really caught my attention, and that was a post from our guest today, Rachel Vickers. I wanted to share that with you now. Rachel from Adirondack Mountains of northern New York. I'm a fisheries biologist, forest ranger, and both a freelance and fisheries expert, field writer for Angler/Coastal Angler magazine. Fishing is my greatest passion in life. I'm a multi-species lady angler, both fresh and saltwater. I'm also an advocate for women and kids in angling. Some of the biggest challenges I've faced are battling metastatic breast cancer while balancing being a single mom and still chasing my passion, traveling long distances to experience and learn different methods used in particular fisheries to target specific species. It's a constant learning and adaptation process, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Don't waste or take for granted 1 minute of this life. Find what feeds your soul and stay dedicated to nurturing it. Never lose yourself in fear, doubt, or hopelessness. You can follow me and my fishing adventures on Instagram at RaylinFishing_outdoors and tight lines to all my beautiful lady anglers out there. We'll put a link to Rachel's Instagram in the show notes, but I just wanted to share that with you. Hopefully that has you as pumped up as I was to have this conversation with such an amazing person. So sit back, enjoy, and be inspired. Well, thanks so much for agreeing to be on. I feel like, you just joined the group and I was reading what you wrote and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect to have you on the show because it sounds like your values and our values are very much in line with each other, what we're trying to do. So
thanks. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah. When I read about the mission of the group and stuff too, I'm like, yeah, that sounds a lot like kind of what I do. So I figured there'd be a lot of like-minded people in the forum.
Definitely. I think that your story and your your journey, I think is going to bring a lot of inspiration to the people that listen to this podcast. So, and that's what we're all about, is inspiring other women to get out there and get active in the outdoors and fishing and hunting and things like that. So very cool.
And that's what's more important nowadays. Someone mentioned to me about there's a lot more single mothers nowadays. And so it's more important that not just the male take that role on, but also the female that can take that role on and do the same things with their children, like fishing and hunting, like a male role model would.
Yeah.
But back 20, 30 years ago, not a lot of women did that. I mean, there were things that women did and things that men did. And nowadays, with the barriers all been broken, it's anyone's game. And in the last 10 years, I've seen, I've been in the fisheries field now for 20 years now almost. And in the last 10 years, I've just seen an explosion in women in angling and women in hunting too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really important.
Yep. And I've thought about the whole like single moms thing. I know a few
that, do want to get even their daughters in, experience or exposed to fishing in the outdoors. And, I've thought about quite a bit, like, how do we really inspire those women to get out there and give it a try if they've never grown up hunting or fishing, but they want their children to have that experience, and they don't have like some type of
background.
Yeah.
Background. Well, it's just an innate desire. Do they want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
As for me, being a part of the outdoors, I was a farm raised girl, so I was always outside. I went to forest ranger school, so I knew that being outside was always what made me feel the best, and it was something that I wanted to pursue to do later on in life. But for someone who doesn't have a lot of experience, the best thing is to find people in your area that do what you want to do, people that you can learn from, people that can mentor you. Because the whole thing too with women in angling is us sharing with each other our experiences, our losses, what worked for us, what didn't. So we ourselves can become better female anglers to then, like you said, teach the next generation that's coming up the right way,
Mm-hmm.
Because nowadays I believe with this generation now and the next, we have more women and females and younger females that want to get into outdoor activities such as hunting and fishing. They just need mentors. And luckily there are, that's why they have kids fishing derbies. In every town that has lakes, there's local fisheries federations and lake federations that you can join, or nonprofit organizations that you can help out with. They hold ice fishing clinics all the time for, people of all ages.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, you got to seek out, you got to look for people in your area that want to do the things that you're interested in learning in, and kind of, pair up with them.
Yeah, I think too, social media, it's a lot easier to get online and find people in your area that are experienced and totally willing to help teach. I think that's really a growing thing. And I think the more that grows, the more, we're just going to see a bigger and bigger increase in the participation in women and kids. So
definitely. Yes, definitely. With social media opens us up to not just people in our area, but people from all over the world. And all over the world. Yeah, all over the country, all over the world. I belong to a lot of fishing forums, so I know people from out of the country, in Canada. And the thing I love about fishing is that it's diversity. And it's not just, it can be anything from taking your kids out on a Sunday to a pond to catch panfish, to big lake fishing where you're trolling with downriggers and copper lines, and you're really, you're looking for the big ones, or you're deep sea fishing. There's so many different aspects of fishing. People, sometimes look at it as in this closed box, but it's so multifaceted with so many different techniques and it depends on what fish you're targeting, the techniques you use. There's a lot more to it than people think. And I don't know, I enjoy just trying to learn different ones. Once I get used to one and I know one, I grew up being a regular, bass, local trout stream, lake angler. There's a picture of me when I was 6 holding a fishing pole, and someone asked me, how long have you been at this fishing thing? And I said, seriously, as long as I can remember, because but growing up obviously out in the country and at the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains, my parents were into the outdoor activities, and my dad used to make it a point to take us fishing, and my grandparents taught us how to hunt and use guns, but everybody doesn't always have it like that. So, the best thing is to educate yourself, continue to educate yourself. You can never stop doing that because it's always changing. And especially nowadays with our water quality and invasive species and all the troubles that we are having in the fisheries field, it's more important than ever for our youth to grow up understanding, fisheries as a science itself. Right. And,
Yeah, well, you mentioned diversity, and something that's come up a couple of times in previous episodes is growing trend of more urban fishing, like actually getting out in the cities, the more
Yes.
urban areas. And I would love to see a larger growth in that area, because a lot of these kids that grow up in those areas, you don't even think about going out and fishing because it's just not a thing there, you know. But those
When you see
opportunities are there. Yeah.
yeah, they are. When you see pavement, you don't think fish, but all those little ditch drainages and all those little creeks that you don't are kind of hidden, they hold fish. And there are it is good to get kids in a more urban setting into doing that. It's more into doing that because it keeps them from, devil's idle time is the devil's plaything, my grandmother used to say. And or boredom, when kids do things out of boredom. I mean, it keeps you it's important for people to know that they're, even in the city, big cities, even New York City, any city that you go to, there are places to fish where you can fish in the most unlikely of places. And that can be fun too, just trying to seek those places out and find them and find what's in them, explore what's actually holding fish. What fish are they holding? It's something, I don't know. It's always been a lifelong thing instilled in me. I mean, with the fish and the fisheries, and it's something that not only it stays with you for a long time. Like, it's not something that you really get bored of because, like I said, it's ever changing. There's always new things to learn about fishing, ice fishing, big water fishing. There's so many different types of fishing. And it's not just one thing, where if you get bored of it, okay, I'm sick of fishing for bass. It's getting boring. I'm using the same stuff. I'm doing the same stuff. You can say, okay, now I want to fish for steelhead and learn how to river fish or fish for salmon. I mean, there's so many things you can do to grow and change. And it's important to keep kids busy nowadays. And even in the city, you can fish. You don't have to live out in the country.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned you like to learn different types of fishing. What's your approach when you're ready to move on to the next thing? Like, how do you go about learning a new style of fishing?
Well, I read up about it a bit. Being a student, I was a student for 7 years straight. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I went to a few different colleges. But the best thing to do when you want to start a new method of fishing, like take for instance, I just picked up center pinning last year.
What is center pinning?
Center pinning is just a center pin reel is a different type of reel, and you use it usually on a really long 11-foot rod, and it pays out line different than any other kind of reel, and you got to hold it completely with your right hand and not let go, and you got to have your right handed on all times, and it's just a way of fishing that it lays out perfect drift lines, and it's great for fish like steelhead, river fish, but you can pin anywhere. You can pin in a lake, in a stream, it's just a different type of fishing. Center pin is a different type of reel. Center pinning is a different type of fishing, like fly fishing. As opposed to where you got a fly rod, you're making specific fly casts. With center pinning, you got to hold it a certain way. You got to pay out the line a certain way. You use certain equipment. You know what I mean? Everything comes with its own respective equipment and things that you use for it. So I recently took up center pinning, and it's, a lot. Sometimes when you start something new, I tend to read about it, and then I look at and I see the people that are really good at it, and I ask questions from them. And I've been fortunate enough to be blessed with a lot of people in the fishing community that are also my friends. So learning a lot. I'm a visual learner too. I mean, I could read in a book 100 times, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to do it. But me seeing it being done helps me learn how to do it, or someone showing me physically and letting me physically do it helps me to learn how to do it. So I tend to just ask questions when I need to, and seek out the people that are interested in the same things I am, and try to, meet up with them and learn from them the best way that I can, learn from them. And there are people that are so awesome that are willing to share like their knowledge and their experience to pass it on, because with fishing and everything, there is like this silent, unspoken, code among fishermen about secret spots and techniques and the way you catch the big fish, but it all comes down to, if you never show anyone, it's never going to be passed on,
Right.
And nowadays, more than ever, we should be looking at it as not just from the fishing aspect, as in, let's teach these kids not only to love fishing, but let's teach them to love the environment the fish live in and to want to protect it and help it to keep it. Because we're having so many problems out west. I mean, with the lack of water and species going extinct. And I know in New York, we've done restoration programs in the hatchery that I went to school for sturgeon, and we raise salmonids there. But it's fisheries management has a big role to play into it too, and that's what we need to teach our kids. It's not just about fishing; it's about respecting and helping the environment they come from, so they can continue doing it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. And if kids are sitting at home and they're playing their Xbox, they're not going to, there's no way for them to like really get that respect. So if we get them out there and fish and they see how valuable the environment is, then, that's what's going to lead to them being interested in conserving it down the road. So yeah, that's super important. So you kind of alluded to this when you're talking about growing up and being on a farm and exposed to the outdoors and just finding most peace in the outdoors. And I imagine that's why you went into the field that you went into. Do you have any advice out there for any young girls or women maybe looking for a career change who might be interested in getting into being a park ranger or fisheries management or anything along those lines?
Well, now is the advice I would give would be to do it. If they enjoy being outside and they enjoy doing things, with the environment, now is the best time to do it, because I know 10 years ago when I went to fisheries college, I was one of the only 5 girls in my program. There's not a lot of women in the field of fisheries and aquaculture or fisheries biology or fish and wildlife management. We are always the minority. But the more females that get into it, we have a lot of opportunity, especially in this field of work, because we are female, because there aren't a lot of us. But I think it's changing now, and it's going to change a lot. I see a lot more from 10 years ago when I visited my college recently, when I did an article on my teacher, how much it's changed and how much more women are in it than before when it was just the 5 girls and 45 guys in the one program. Now it's the best time more than ever, because it also, just being outside and being able to do things for yourself outside, it gives you a sense of independence, a very good, deep sense of independence. And there's nothing more better to root you to this earth, especially when you have to go through trials, hardships, hard times, whatever, which we all do, is that deep-rooted feeling that life is a finite and beautiful thing, and that we all need to, people that are outside, I think, appreciate that more. They see more sunrises, sunsets. Even, we have a joke, a bad day fishing is better than a good day in the office, or,
Right.
It gives you that when you see, when you see things from the outside perspective, I think it puts you more in tune with yourself and everything that's going on around you.
Mm-hmm. Well, the path that you had to get to where you are was by no means an easy one. As you mentioned, we all have struggles, but you had to struggle for a while for your very survival on this planet. Can you tell Can you tell the listeners a little bit about that and how you overcame the odds?
Right. About a week, I was sick for my entire 29th year, and I had just graduated with my degree in fisheries. I was working with the DEC. That's the Department of Environmental Conservation here. And I was sick for about a year. I went to the doctors, and I was pretty much misdiagnosed for about a year. A week after my 30th birthday, I was diagnosed with early onset aggressive metastatic stage 3 breast cancer. So I had to, of course, stop working. My son was 5 years old. I was a single mom. And my whole life just came to a screeching halt, basically, and life, career, any dreams I had, whatever was going on. And suddenly your life revolves around this bomb that gets dropped on you, basically. And yeah, I had to go through a lot. It was very far advanced by the time they had finally caught it. But I went through 30 surgeries in 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And once they start, and some people, people don't understand everybody's cancer is different, so everybody's experiences and what they have to go through to either survive it or not are different. Being my age, 30 years old, and having that aggressive of a cancer, they kind of had to give me the strongest chemo you could get and get all the cancer out of me, which took a lot. They had to take a lot of parts out. So it was just surgery after surgery, chemo, radiation, surgery. Fast forward, I was told I had a 20% chance of making it to 5 years past my diagnosis. So that right there is, in itself. But I don't believe in kind of what other people say. I believe the human will and spirit and are very powerful, more powerful than anything else in this world. And I had a lot of motivating factors. I had a 5-year-old son that I wasn't about to leave without a mom. I had a lot of stuff to do, but it took a long road, and it changes you as a person. I went through a lot, I mean. There were times when I didn't think I was going to make it, or nor did I want to, due to the amount of pain that I was in from what I was going through. But through that whole thing, you lose control of your life completely. But through that whole thing, it's stupid to say, but fishing was one thing I still could control. Fishing was something I still loved. And as weak as I was, no matter, and as useless as I felt, because a lot of cancer survivors, warriors say the same thing. They just don't like to feel helpless, useless, depend on everybody else. But you kind of have to surrender to that. And it teaches you to be a more empathetic, compassionate person. And luckily, by the grace of God, and for some reason I beat the odds and I'm still here. I think through my sheer stubbornness and will, I think I'm still here. I get that from my dad, by the way. Yeah. I'm just a very stubborn individual when I get my mind set to something, but I'm still here. Yep. And my son's 16. He's driving now. So that's crazy. He's a junior in high school. That's awesome. But I really firmly believe that, whatever, you don't get to choose the crosses you bear in life. You just do the best you can with what you have. And I remember you sent me a text with a couple of questions that you asked me. Yeah. And one of them was, if I was to write a book, what would I name it? Now, it's funny you asked me that question, because I am a writer. I write for publication magazines. I write for newsletters. And I am currently working on a book, because the things that have happened in my life, people joke with me, you can't write. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I can, and I will. Well, that's, because it's saying the things that have happened to you, you can't write this stuff. Well, yeah. I started a couple of years back. It's a work in progress. When you write a book, it's not like a publication writing where you just got to get it in by a deadline. Right. It's something, and especially when it's about yourself, because as a writer, I write and then I reread like 1,000 times over. And I'm still old school. I'm not the technologically advanced kind of, new age person. So if I was to write a book, I don't know, and name it right now, because I change my mind all the time like a normal woman does, yes. I would probably call it Catching Hope. I don't know. That. Yeah. I think hope is a very powerful thing. I discuss this on a different podcast for they're called 4S for Life Foundation, great people, that that there is no such thing as false hope. Is that hope can keep people going through the most direst of circumstances, and hope can be that determining factor of living or dying sometimes. People don't get that. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people lose hope, and they got to find something that, like I said, feeds their soul, makes them feel like they're here for a purpose, they're here for a reason. And even if they fail at it 100 times and say, oh, I stink at this, just if it makes you feel good and you still want to do it, still do it. Mm-hmm. And And I think that's important. I do. I think it's important in any facet, whether whether you're sick or completely healthy, or if you just want to change your life and do something different. Change is scary. No one likes change, but change is a part of life. And the more we get used to that and the more adaptable we become as human beings, I think the better off we'll be.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to ask you that question. I was thinking about your story, and I was thinking about the fact that you're a writer, and I was like, you've got to write that story, and that's why that popped into my head as what you would call, your book. And I think that that's a perfect title.
It's either going to be the book name or the boat name.
Well, that's a good one too. That's a great boat name too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fishing kind of gave you that hope, I guess, a little bit, going through that process.
A lot, because when I was being torn apart, I was averaging 4 major surgeries a year at one point. And there wasn't too much I could do. And I didn't want to leave the house. And people tell you that have gone through cancer treatment that if you are, most of the time you're too sick to go anywhere. I've spent months on end in a bed where I can't move, can't do anything. And that drives you nuts when you're an outdoor active kind of person that can't do anything. Or that you lose all your hair, you lose everything that defines you as a woman, your breasts, blah, blah, blah. In my case, I had to have everything taken to be able to be here. So I had to kind of redefine myself and find myself again. And that's tough to do. And get comfortable with this person today that I see in the mirror as opposed to who I once was before all that. And I still struggle every day. Once you've lived through strong any chemo radiation or any surgeries or trauma, your body's forever changed. Like you'll never be the person you were before, but you're still here and you're still a person and you still try to strive to do the things that make you happy.
Yeah, I imagine it totally transforms your perspective on life. Big time.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. More than I could ever explain to anyone, because the person who I was then to the person who I am today are two completely, totally different people. And in a sense, I'm actually, I know this sounds weird, but thankful for it, because I like the person I am today a lot better than who I used to be when I was younger. But when we're young, we all do impetuous things and, aren't the most selfless of people.
Right.
We're very quick to judge, and people are still that way, but we hope to get wiser and better at it as we get older. We hope to.
Yes. Well, you seem to be a person who's just really full of inspiration and encouragement. So I really appreciate that. And,
Thank you.
I love seeing you in the Woman Angler and Adventure Facebook group. And do you get to you mentioned, meeting people from overseas and different parts of the country. Do you get to do much traveling then?
No, I don't. I haven't gotten to do a lot of traveling. So from the age of 30 to pretty much just a couple of years ago, I wasn't able to do anything. So just in the last couple of years, and I've been able to, the only place I've traveled to is Florida, the states in between and back.
Okay.
So I still would like to travel like out west and go fly fishing in Montana. I'd like to go, into Canada and fish for big water lakers through the I mean, there's things I still want, a lot of things on my bucket list. Yeah. And working for the magazine, it afforded me the luxury of being able to go to the Bassmasters. That was pretty much a real highlight of my life. And you know what I mean? Getting to meet all the Bassmaster elites, getting to be, around Kevin Van Dam and Aaron Martins and all these living legends, and just standing there being the only girl back there, excuse me. I kind of felt like a very small fish in a big pond when I kind of set in what was going on. When you see all the ESPN cameras and everything, and it's like, I'm from a farm and I drive a truck and you know what I mean? It's like a small town girl, and then all of a sudden you're surrounded by all these cameras. But it was actually really wonderful. They were great people. They're people just like you and me, and they just want to be treated like that, which was really cool. So, I mean, I've gotten to do a lot of great things too. And in just the last couple of years that I've been able to do things, I've been blessed to be able to do things like that and be able to travel a little bit, because my son's older now, being 16, works, drives, does his own thing. It affords me the luxury to travel a little bit more now that he's older. He's not young. And all my family luckily live right around each other.
Oh,
So there's a
nice.
lot of good support. Yeah, you're not going to make it through this life unless you have a good support system, especially if tragedy like cancer hits your family, you know.
Hmm. Well,
You need
yeah,
that.
I wondered about that. I mean, I imagine you almost, I mean, you have to. I mean, there's no way you could go through that and raise a child, and I just can't even imagine.
Well, people, what I do imagine it, and I do know that there are women out there that don't have the support systems I have, and do have children, and still are going through kind of what I'm going through, and it's sad because there should be more help for people like that, for young women or young cancer people with cancer that are in their early stages of life. Our 30s, our 20s and 30s are our building blocks of life,
Hmm.
and I went to college for 7 years. I earned 3 degrees. I did what I was supposed to do. I was working the job I meant to be working when I graduated. And when something like that hits your life, it's a total stop, and then you have to restart again. Who knows when they tell you you can? Who knows how many years later? But unfortunately for me, it was almost a decade. But I was blessed enough to have a good support system, good people in my life, and people that have always supported whatever decision I've decided to do. If that means traveling all over the state and back so I can chase fish.
Well, that's great. Is your son into fishing at all?
My son is a computer programmer.
Okay.
And he works. So that's the irony of the thing. I've taken him fishing with me since he was old enough to walk. And now that he's in his own personality time thing,
Hmm.
he does his own thing. Like he'll go fishing with me if I ask him to, but it's not something that he's excited to do with me because he's at that 16-year-old teenage years where he's his own person
Right.
and wants to do his own thing. And unfortunately, when they get older like that, yeah, you want to mold them. Like of course I wanted a boy so I could have a permanent fishing buddy. But God gave me the little irony that I get this perfect boy, this great kid, but he's not going to love exactly what I love, you
Yeah.
know?
And it may come back around down the road. I know a lot of people that
Yes.
grew up fishing and then got away from it and then just got drawn back into it. So that's definitely a possibility.
I hope that when he becomes a father, down the road and has kids, that he'll come back to it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he will.
And the
But
truly important thing is that he had those experiences growing up, so he has that connection with it. Whether it does come back around or not, at least he had that experience.
yeah, because it was always just usually me and him, and I took him with me pretty much everywhere I went. So when it came to fishing, yep, and I have pictures of him when he's tiny, holding fish bigger than he is, but he's his own man. He does his own thing. I don't force him to do, he's a good kid, so I don't force him to do, you can't force kids to want to love what you love or they're going to hate it.
Right.
That's the bottom line. It's a reverse psychology thing. You just kind of let them be their own person, and then they'll come back to you. He'll come back and be like, "Hey, mom, can I go fishing with you?" And of course, you're there, and okay,
Yep.
but you can't push them to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the irony of it, is that I push so hard for females and kids and do the fishing derbies to get kids into angling, and then I have my son who's 16 who just wants to do what he wants to do. But that's how life is. It's a balance of scales.
Yep. Well, I again appreciate your time so much for coming on the show, and I did have one more question that
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of Tim Ferriss. He has a really popular podcast that I listen to occasionally, and one of the questions that I always thought was really neat that he asks a lot of his guests is, if you could put one message on a billboard that millions or even maybe billions of people would see, what would it be?
Now, I've been thinking about this since I got your text. And I would probably say that I don't know, unknown of where this came from, but I heard it somewhere. And it was at a time when I really kind of needed to hear it. Sometimes you got to crack so that the light can get in.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this world, we go through a lot of ups and downs, and especially now, a lot of turmoil. So people don't understand that it's okay to, fail. It's okay to crack. It's okay to lose it, because that's when the light shines in. That's when you sit and get epiphanies. That's when
Yeah.
So if I could put one thing on a billboard, it would be everyone has to crack, as so the light can shine in.
Yeah, I love that. And that's such a great reminder, especially when people are going through difficult challenges, is to know to hold on to that hope. And when you get through it, you're going to be a better person for having gone through it. So,
yep. There's always going to be good days. There's always going to be bad days, but the bad ones make you appreciate the good 10 times more. Believe me.
Yeah,
they do.
Definitely. Well, thank you again so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found inspiration from Rachel's story. Please share this episode with your friends. You can access the show notes for this episode, including links and photos, at thewomanangler.com/45. Oh, and heads up, if you're an Apple iPhone user, listening to podcasts just got a whole lot easier. Now you can simply say, Siri, play the Woman Angler and Adventurer podcast. While it's playing, you can say, Siri, subscribe to this podcast, and boom, you'll be subscribed so you won't miss an episode. Speaking of not missing episodes, you're not going to want to miss next week's. My co-host Barb Carey recently had the pleasure of sitting down with Kristen Merwin and Aaron Murray from Woman Anglers of Minnesota that you won't want to miss. I hear there was some crying involved, plus a major distraction with some real nice deer right outside Barb's kitchen window, and of course a lot of laughter. So stay tuned for that, and take care everyone.